Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the channel. Today was supposed to be the UFC 279 pre-fight presser. Supposed to take place 7 p.m. Eastern. We were supposed to get Khamzat Chimaev, Nate Diaz, Kevin Holland, Daniel Rodriguez, Tony Ferguson, Li Jingliang, all on stage for what seemed like would be an eventful press conference. And I personally thought there was a chance that Nate Diaz would no-show for this press conference, but he did show up. But unfortunately for a lot of fans, the press conference got canceled because of an incident in the back. A lot of people are calling it a brawl. Some people are speculating about physicality. And I wanted to make a video discussing this. Not because I think this is some huge news story. Just because I want to discuss what actually really happened. Because I feel like there's a lot of over-exaggerating when discussing the UFC 279 press conference cancellation. And I know we don't know all the details yet, but I know some people have rushed to tweet out information that they're not even sure because they're not even there, just because they heard it from this guy who told this guy. And there's people who've rushed out videos reacting to news about the press conference that isn't even true. And so I wanted to make a video discussing what actually really happened based on everything I was able to obtain online from legitimate reports. And I'm also going to discuss how this was the best thing to happen to the UFC, even though Dana White will act like this is some kind of black eye on the sport and that it was a travesty and that it will never happen again and this and that. And also, I really want to discuss the way the MMA media is covering this quote-unquote brawl. So what happened was, the UFC pressers are usually in the arena. They have a curtain, they have the stage in front of it, and all the fighters wait behind the curtain. This is known, this is how the weigh-ins work as well. And it's just, they have all the fighters in the back behind the curtain, and it's just basically an open arena. And they have a bunch of security back there. Well, anyway, essentially what happened is there was altercations between a combination of Khamzat Chimaev, Kevin Holland, and Nate Diaz. And a lot of MMA media will report there's been a brawl. There's been, Ariel Helwani said there's been some physicality reported, and we'll talk about Ariel Helwani more in a second. But essentially what happened, and I joked around, I tweeted out, per sources, breaking news, a bunch of grown men, including Khamzat Chimaev, Nate Diaz, and Kevin Holland, pushed, yelled, and threw objects at each other. And that's basically the synopsis of what happened behind the scenes at UFC 279. You had men who are scheduled to fight each other. Some are not scheduled to fight each other between Kevin Holland and Khamzat Chimaev. And essentially, they just weren't nice to each other. They were throwing things at each other. There was some pushing. Apparently, Khamzat Chimaev pushed Kevin Holland with a kick. But who knows if that's actually the truth. Hopefully we get some actual video. That's why I waited a couple hours to even make a video discussing this. But essentially that's what happened. Some cage fighters, yelled at each other and threw some items at each other. And the MMA media is blowing this so out of proportion. And there's a reason I believe they're doing this. I mean, most of you guys can already assume the reason why they're doing this. But they're acting like it's a brawl. Ariel Helwani put out like a 3-minute video on Twitter discussing what happened at the presser. And basically the synopsis of his video is essentially what I just told you. But he said there was not enough security there. And a manager was basically the person who was breaking this up as it was going on. And eventually this manager got hit with some water bottles from the Diaz camp. And Ariel Helwani is at home in New York. And he is reporting about what happened at the UFC 279 presser like he is at ground zero on 9/11. That's the way he was reporting it. And the way he was acting so overdramatic, and there's been multiple MMA media outlets being so overdramatic about what's going on here. And there's even been some that are clutching their pearls and acting like this is so horrible, which we'll talk about again in a second. But again, these guys just pushed each other. Nobody's injured. Nobody got punched. What are we really doing here? What are we really doing here over dramatizing, basically a scuffle in the back. And the reason the MMA media is doing this, and I know someone's going to comment down below and say, well, you're criticizing them for talking about it and you're talking about it. It's not the fact that they're talking about it. It's the way they're talking about it. It's like they're acting like this is some massive, like WWE hardcore title match. Like Kevin Holland did not hit Khamzat Chimaev upside the head with a steel chair. The Diaz brothers did not put Khamzat Chimaev through a table, okay? You know, that's not what happened here. This was just a scuffle. They threw some items at each other. They are cage fighters. They are fighting each other in a couple days, and people are acting like this is some big event. And I honestly believe the main reason this is being so over-dramatized by the MMA media is I think UFC 279 is not doing that well. And I know people are going to say, well, the embedded numbers are doing good and this and that. I don't 100% believe that means, you know, everything UFC 279 is doing amazing and the buy rate's going to do amazing and every article about UFC 279 is doing amazing. I don't believe that. You know, okay, people watch the embeddeds. They want to see Nate Diaz. This is a terrible fight card, and I believe that the media is like, okay, well, what are we going to talk about? Because we can't talk about the competitiveness of the matchup because it's a squash match between Chimaev and Diaz. Everything else on here is weird matchups that were made on short notice. So let's drum up this behind-the-scenes brawl at the UFC 279 presser. That's what they're doing here. That's what they're doing. And at the end of the day, guys, this is just some pushing, some throwing of water bottles, some yelling at each other from grown men. This is a non-story. I get it that people are going to talk about it, and I'm talking about it right now. But the fact that people are acting like, I mean, the John Jones-Daniel Cormier brawl from a while back was much more significant than this. There was punches thrown. There was sets broken. It was insanity, okay? That was straight up insanity. But people acting like this is some craziness. Nobody got injured. And, I mean, look what happened with Conor McGregor in the bus incident, you know, back, you know, at UFC 223 where he threw the dolly through the window, cut multiple people, multiple fights were canceled. Rose Namajunas went into a deep depression. And the reason I bring up that specific incident is because Dana White, in the immediate aftermath of the dolly incident, the infamous dolly incident with Conor McGregor, acted like this was the worst thing that he had ever seen. Like he had just witnessed, you know, the worst thing his eyes could have ever seen. And what did the UFC go and do? The UFC put that in every piece of promotional material they possibly could. And, you know, at the end of the day, that's why I believe this backstage altercation, as much of a non-story that it is, I believe this is better than if they would have had the press conference itself. I know a lot of people, you know, were disappointed that they didn't get to see the press conference. They didn't get to see Diaz and Chimaev go back and forth, which, you know, I was kind of looking forward to it. But at the same time, were we going to understand a word that they even said? Khamzat Chimaev has a thick accent, and, you know, Nate Diaz sounds like Boomhauer from King of the Hill. I really don't know how much we were going to get out of them, you know, but people are disappointed. I get it. Dana White saying, you know, I'm right there with you guys as the fans were booing. And if I was there live, I'd be really disappointed. But the point is, this is going to be promotional, you know, material for the UFC. Don't be surprised if you see it in the embedded. Don't be surprised if you see some of this footage on Saturday night. And, you know, the UFC cries and whines about this type of stuff, and Dana White pretends like it's so terrible. They will put this stuff in the promotional packages to hype up these fights. And I believe this incident will increase pay-per-view buys more than any pre-fight presser would have. I don't know by how much, but I believe it will. Now, before I end this video, I wanted to talk about a couple things that I kept circulating around, which is just completely untrue. There's a fake Brett Okamoto Twitter tweeting out that Darren Till got knocked out in the scuffle. That is completely false. That did not happen. And then also, MMA Fighting mentioned that somebody told them that Paulo Costa was there and Paulo Costa was involved in this backstage altercation. That is completely untrue as well. I feel like with stuff like this where it's kind of big MMA news, you know, they were hoping for some sound bites from the presser. I feel like so many people are so quick to jump on it and just spew out the first thing they hear. I feel like that's how a lot of this, false information just gets spread around, because I even fell for some of this. I saw that Brett Okamoto tweet. Somebody sent me a screenshot. I thought that was legit. It just looked legit. And these weirdos who are making fake accounts impersonating people are the strangest people ever. But at the end of the day, does this brawl, does this incident, does it, promote the fight even more for me? No, I don't care. This does nothing for me. Nothing really happened. If there was some punches thrown, if something significant happened here and it was more of a story, maybe it hypes up the fight a little bit more. But some guys throwing water bottles at each other, that's some stuff we do in middle school. I don't care. That doesn't get me any more excited for UFC 279 than I was yesterday. But let me know what you guys think of all this down in the comments. Am I crazy? Am I right? Am I wrong here? Don't forget to like the video, and thank you so much for watching.